going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. This is our top 10 hottest selling comics of the week, our weekly video series brought to you by PopCultureZone.com. Before we get into this week's top 10 books, don't forget to check out PopCultureZone.com's. Their links are below. Check them out if you're interested in getting your hands on some awesome exclusive and incentive variants at affordable costs, CGC slabs, and of course all different kinds of pop culture items, including toys and statues. And if you're buying raw books, they ship at a flat rate fee of only $4.99. Pop Culture Zone is also on eBay, where they still hold a 100% customer feedback rating with over 8,000 ratings this year alone. Those links are below. Check them out and make sure you follow them on eBay as well.
All right, guys, we are looking at last week's top 10 hottest comics of the week. We are looking at 3 hot picks out of that list, and we're going to do a 1 week later look back. We're going to talk about the numbers that those books were trending at when they made the list, and we're going to look at what they're doing right now as of today. And I'm going to be giving them either props or flops.
That's right. But first, we're going to start off with the top 10 hottest books from last Monday. That's right. Almost a week ago. Here we go. We're just going to get into it, right, guys? Here we go. And at number 10, we had DMZ number 1. That just premiered on HBO Max. At number 9, we have Timeless. Number 1, Mark Buckingham, 3rd print. At number 8, we have Batman number 2. At number 7, we have Darth Vader. Number 6, the first full appearance of the Grand Inquisitor, which we saw in that amazing Obi-Wan trailer. At number 6, we have Star Wars, The High Republic Avengers. Number 2, the first full appearance of the Big Bad Marching Row. At number 5, we have Captain Carter. Number 1, the animation variant. That thing, I love this cover. At number 4, we have Batman number 28, the first Harper Row as Bluebird. At number 3, we have King Conan, number 3. At number 2, we have the spectacular Spider-Man 116, the first appearance of the Foreigner. We brought that up a little bit ago, a few minutes ago. And at number 1, we got West Coast Avengers, number 46. All right, an interesting week. I'm kind of surprised DMZ made it in there. That was like a slow burn, and then maybe it's just a hot burn, people realizing that it debuted on HBO Max. But Chris, let's get your thoughts.
All right, guys, I got 3. Very excited to talk about these 3, to be quite honest with you. So let's just get into my first pick. My number 3, Darth Vader, number 6. All right, guys, this is the first full appearance of the Grand Inquisitor. We got the Obi-Wan trailer. Oh, my goodness. I can't wait for the show. All right, let's look at what this book was doing when it hit the top 10 last week. It had 161% upward trend in sales, with last week's high 9.8 sale hitting $600. This week's high 9.8 hit $490. Now, okay, that's a little bit of a 18% decrease in value right there. But as I say, focusing solely on highs isn't always, a proper measurement of the market. Now let's look at these average raws. Last week's average raw, when it hit the top 10, $126. This week's average raw, $115. That's a nice little 9% decrease right there. So to me, that's saying that this book is still roughly trending around the same value. Now, I know that $110 decrease in a 9.8 could be quite alarming, and you guys sit and say, "Oh no, it's already plummeting." But look, I've been talking about this a lot, and we'll probably be talking about this for months to come. The 9.8 market, is still booming, and it's still a thing of its own. It's its own beast. It has its own catalyst to propel these numbers up, no matter the book. Sometimes, so this is also indicative of the reactionary behavior of how we are reacting right now. Now, I got called out last week because I gave one book flops, and I said that there's a lot of FOMO here. We're reacting to these things, and people came out and just said, "Oh, well, people just like to buy stuff and they want to have it first." And I'm like, okay, that's fine. It is what it is, but I'm not sitting here throwing salt on the wound. I'm being honest with you all, because I know that there's probably people watching the show right now that can raise their hand and admit, I've been in a situation where we get an announcement of a show, or we get an announcement of a character or a casting of a character, and I get on my phone, or, and I'm going on eBay or whatever it may be, and I get down into an auction and into a bidding war, and it's a bit reactionary. Sometimes you may regret it. Sometimes you can live with it. That's just the nature of the beast. And it is a fact right now. If you look at the trends of how we are reacting to all of these types of announcements, we are, unlike ever before, as a whole, really jumping on anything when it comes to live action. So the 9.8 market, that type of reactionary behavior, it just takes one or two people that bid that book up to $600. Maybe people calm down a little bit. That's why the high was only $490 this week. But again, if you look at the raw sales, this book's trending. Now, I'm going to give you guys a props or flops, but then I'm going to explain a little bit of why I'm going to give it what I'm giving it. And I am giving this book props. I'm giving this book props because I truly believe in Star Wars. I truly believe in the totality of what Disney and George Lucas is doing, Lucasfilms is doing right now with the Star Wars brand, building this Star Wars universe and fleshing it out way past what we've known with the original players in the original trilogy. I think that these books with these first appearances are going to be solid long-term investments. It doesn't mean I'm not giving this props saying, yeah, that's right, go buy it. Go buy a 9.8 for $400, $500, $600, or go pay $126 for a raw copy. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is I do believe there's staying power for these books, for these characters, because the fandom of Star Wars, I do believe, is unlike anything else. And Jeff, you and I have talked about this before. I think that the comic book side of the Star Wars fandom has been overlooked for a very long time. And what the Disney Plus shows have been doing to bring people back in, I think is really opening up the fandom to the comic books right now. And although this book may see some ebb and flow depending on what happens with the Grand Inquisitor in the Obi-Wan show or in the live action verse, I think long term it doesn't matter, because long term I think these books are going to hold.
I agree 100%. I was hoping you would not say that, but I am 100% on board with you. It's Star Wars. This has been a hot character ever since he appeared in the Clone Wars. I think a character like this, I think a character like Cad Bane have lasting staying power, and it's going to dip between now and May. This book, no doubt about that. I would not spend I would not spend $500 on this for a 9.8. I would not spend $115 on this for a raw. I mean, they're out in the wild, guys, and you can probably find them for $30 out there. So
I will add real quick too. Again, when we focus on these 9.8s, here's another modern book that if you are going to spend a lot of money, I still would spend $100 on a high grade raw, hoping to get the 9.8, then spending, $500, $600 on a 9.8 copy. Yeah. But just adding that to your point, Jeff, again, you can invest in this book. You can find interest in this book and just collecting it, and you can still invest in this book without spending that kind of money, because it's not always about the near perfect 9.8 type books, guys. Comic books, a specific issue of a comic book follows trends for the most part. If a 9.8 or a high grade is increasing by 30-35% on the market, then the lower grades are going to be increasing as well. So
agreed. Dan, we need your thoughts. We know you're not the biggest Star Wars collector, but what are your thoughts in terms of the broader picture with Star Wars, if you have any?
Well, it seems like the Star Wars fans are a very particular group, and they know what they're looking for. Very much like I used to be as a Star Trek fan with Gene Roddenberry back in the day. I knew what to look for, and I got completely away from it when J.J. Abrams took over the movies. They were awful because he has no idea what Star Trek is all about. So Star Wars is sort of in flux right now, both in the comics, in the movies, and in Disney Plus. I think they seem to be leaning finally back towards what Star Wars fans are looking for overall. But to Chris's point about the 9.8s, you get a comic because you love the story. Let's say you find a beat up copy that's maybe a 5.0, but you love the story, you still grab it. It's not going to be worthless. So I wouldn't split hairs if you don't find a perfect comic out in the wild. Get whatever you like. And again, if you're paying a couple bucks for it and it brings you happiness and value, go ahead and do it.
That's it right there. 100%. We're going to move on to the next book. Chris, your second most interesting pick off of that list in terms of props or flops. What do you got?
All right. Had to pick some Spidey action, folks. We got my number 2 pick, Spectacular Spider-Man number 116, folks. This is the first full appearance of the Foreigner. And for those that don't know or that do know, we did get a casting announcement for the Foreigner for the upcoming Kraven film produced by Sony. So this has obviously got people going to the eBay, going to their stores, picking these books up. So let's look what it did last week. 150% upward trend in sales when it hit that top 10. The last week's high in a 9.8 when it hit the top 10, $300. This week's high, there was none. There was no 9.8 sales, folks. So we can't really gauge what's been going on there. Now, let's again look at the averages. So last week's average raw when it hit the top 10, $30. This week's average raw, $38. So that's a 27% increase in value. Again, averages, you got to, take them with a little bit of grain of salt, especially for raw books. It doesn't paint the entire picture of what somebody is paying for a specific grade, but it does show you that this book is still moving, and overall, people are paying more for this book right now, just by a little bit. Here's the thing with this book. Spider-Man is obviously one of the most popular and one of the most highest grossing superheroes of all time. And when we talk about Marvel, he is that number one for Marvel. The Amazing Spider-Man is, in my humble opinion, the Grail run of all Grail runs. And Amazing Spider-Man books from the Bronze Age going into the Copper Age, even if they're not keys, are continually rising in value and being sought after more and more. Spectacular Spider-Man is at second tier because it falls second to the Amazing Spider-Man run. But there is still a lot of goodness in it. And for folks that haven't read the Spectacular Spider-Man, that was an amazing run from beginning to end, from 1976 to when it ended in the mid 90s. But
agreed.
Yeah, but outside of the story, I still Spectacular Spider-Man as a title doesn't, as common issues go, doesn't hold as much weight as the Amazing Spider-Man's. But this book, because of it being a Spider-Man, late Bronze Age, early Copper, actually, I do believe this was in 86. I absolutely believe that this book has a lot of great potential past movie spec. Okay, so props or flops. Again, I'm going with props for this one. It's very similar to what I said about Star Wars, and I'm just reiterating and repeating myself here. It's Spider-Man, folks. It's Spider-Man. You actually have a classic cover of Sabretooth and, black costume Spidey. I do believe this is a very early appearance of Sabretooth as well. So you got that going for it. And then you got a character like the Foreigner. Yes, this character can show up in this film. They could do him well. You never know with Sony and their properties. We don't know what's going to happen. So I would still, even though I'm giving this book props, be cautious with this book as well. Don't just go out, paying top dollar for this book. Search your all of your options. Go on eBay. Search your, Mercari. Go to your local shops. Search the back issue bins. See what's out there. Because if this Kraven movie flops, people are going to turn their heads from this in the short term. And this book can dip back down. Now, I don't know what this book was selling for prior to the film, to this announcement for the film. But it's never going to be a dollar bin book. I don't even think it was beforehand. I could tell, actually, I know it wasn't prior to this, but just be careful. Long-term value, though, again, anything Spider-Man with the first appearance like this is going to be a solid book in the long run, no matter what happens with the live action component.
Yeah, I agree. This is a great it's a Bronze Age book, right? It's this to me. I don't know why.
Early Copper.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
It's just a classic. It's like a classic cover. And like the fact that it's the Foreigner's first appearance, which could be something, I don't know. That's just, that adds more to it. But again, an early Sabretooth appearance, a great cover of Sabretooth versus Spider-Man. I mean, I'm all in on this too. I agree. Dan, I'm not sure what your thoughts on this are, but we'd love to hear them.
Well, first of all, there's going to have to be a reclassification of what Silver Age, Bronze Age, and Copper Age is.
I knew Dan was going to get into this one.
I'm sort of a one-man band regarding pushing it because I was there in the Bronze Age buying them. We didn't call it Bronze Ages. I'm taking it off the rack. But with this particular book here, I guess it does pay to be old because I have it, and I paid 75 cents for this, and I haven't read that comic in over 30 years because it is an over 30-year-old book. But the whole run, as you say, is very, very underrated. And that's what's fun about getting all these comics here, because now I have to dig through my bins to find it, because when a comic becomes popular, you never know it's going to be what the MCU is going to be coming out with or what they're doing. That's the fun thing about collecting all these. But these Peter Parker stories were underrated for several reasons, not just story, but the artwork. I think John Romita did a lot of the artwork along the way.
Sal Buscema had
yeah,
the longest run on that. I think it was from the early 80s. I forget exactly to like issue 230 something in like 1994.
He was one of the mainstays. Al Milgrom was another one. Sal Buscema still remains my favorite artist to this day. But
oh really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's Dan De La Torre trivia we did not know. Interesting. This run, you had like Tombstone, introduced Tombstone. There were a lot of cool things for me collecting. When I started collecting as a kid, it was I didn't know anything different. There was Amazing Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man, and Web of Spider-Man. I didn't know any better. That was it. It was
Marvel Team Up.
Well, I didn't see that as a true Spider-Man book. I didn't
really.
I mean, I didn't collect it. I was a kid. I was just going for Spider-Man. It didn't say Spider-Man on it. I didn't collect it in the title. But yeah, so again, I'm glad that these books are getting their love because I was all in on all three of those series. So again, it can't hurt to get it. Even it's going to dip down once the news dies down about Craven because they're in production. You're not going to hear as much. We'll see what happens, but it is definitely interesting, 100%. All right. Your final book, Chris. I don't know if people are going to know what it is. It could be a surprise because I don't know if they have any clue as to what this could be for any reason prior to me showing the other image first. Let's just do it. Let's go for it.
All right. My number one pick was number one on the top 10 this last week. And that is West Coast Avengers.
Oh, what?
Number 46. The greatest book of all time. This is the first appearance of the Great Lake Avengers, the greatest team of all time. All right, no, seriously, though, let's look at what this book did. Then we're going to get into props or flaps. 214% upward trend in sales. Last week's high 9.8 when it made the top 10 list, $365. This week's high 9.8 as of today, $300. All right, now, this is what I want you all to pay attention to. There are only 3 sales since. Oh, by the way, for context, folks, why this book made the list. There was some sort of leak, all right, from the She-Hulk set. And now there's a rumor that one of the Great Lake Avenger characters might be showing up in the She-Hulk show. Now, keep in mind, rumors. It's all rumors. Nothing's confirmed. We don't know. So people are going ham. They're going crazy. Trying to find this book. It was number one. It was number one on the list. So I had to throw that in there. So keep that in mind and let's look at this. Only 3 sales since the leak. 2 of them were buy it now at 365, which was the high, and 350. The one other one was an auction, and it had a $300 starting bid, and somebody won it off of one bid for $300 at that starting bid price. All right? Keep this in mind. There were no sales of this book in a 9.8 since January 20th of 2020. That was over 2 years ago now. And that sale was $126. Now, keep in mind, even just with inflation and the way the market's been going, you got to take that into account from that 2-year-old price. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but let's go into the average raws. When it hit the top 10, it was an average raw about $20. This week, as of today, this week's average raw sitting at about 18. So not much change at all there, folks. Now, prior to the leak, the average high raw was about $15. There were some scattered, lower sales for like, $3, $4, $5 here and there. But overall, the average was about $15. So here's my take on this book. It made the number one list. Or excuse me, the number one on the top 10 list because it did move units. Because that's what we use, Cover Price's top 10 lists, and that's how they track and place their books. Units sold. But it still didn't sell that many units. And it just goes to show that there wasn't that many units selling prior. And if you look at this here, when you look at the raw books, the price hasn't gone up extremely high, So I'm kind of not mad at the fact that people aren't, jumping all over this book and paying $100 for a raw copy, right? I mean, that's not happening. I do believe there was one outlier that sold for $39. I think that was the raw high, the week that it made the list. But, who knows? Maybe it was the eBay listing that said CGC at 9.8, and somebody got in their feelings and was like, oh, I got to go for it. Got to pay double of what what everyone else is paying. Who knows? People aren't going super crazy, at least bidding this up to some crazy astronomical numbers. But let's look back at these graded prices. There was only a few. First off, there's only about 42 9.8s on the census, and there's only been 3 sold over the last 2 weeks. The ones that sold for buy it now, especially that first one, the first one that sold was the high, $365. This tells me this. It tells me that maybe somebody that got it for around $126 a couple years ago heard the leak, heard the rumor, and was like, well, shoot, let me put mine up on eBay. And they set an asking price because they're like, I'm gonna set an asking price where I can make a profit, and let's just see if people bite. And guess what? Somebody did. And that's why I believe this book sold for $365. Not because supply and demand essentially brought it to a market equilibrium price that is a fair market value. No, because there was only one for sale. The seller put it at a buy it now, and one person got the FOMO. And again, point fingers at me saying, oh, you're just an anti-FOMO. No, I'm not. FOMO is real. It's a fear of missing out on things. This individual maybe just didn't want to miss out on this book. And they just said, I got to have it. I'm going to buy it. And they bought it. And then a few days later, one other one was listed at a buy it now of $350. So let me tell you what might have happened then. Maybe this was another person that bought their book for $100 or whatever. One of the 42 people that had it CGC years ago or whatever. And they're like, oh, here's an opportunity for me. One just sold for $365. Let me put mine up. I'm going to put $350. And just to be safe, one other person, all it took was one other person to say, now they're looking at buying, they're looking at recent sold. They're seeing a $365. And what do people do? Where I tell people don't do this. Don't look at single sales. Don't look at outliers. Don't look at just one sale and use it as a marker of fair market value. So maybe just somebody said, oh, it sold for $365. There's only one listed right now. It's going for $350. That must be a steal. I need it. Boom, buy it now. But when somebody else said, oh man, I see this book is moving now. We got 2 sales for over $350. Buy it now. I might get more than that. I'm going to do mine as an auction. Somebody else says, I'm going to make money off this. They put it for an auction. Starting bid, $300. It sits there for 7 days. Nobody bids. Until the last minute, you get one bidder in because there's one other person, just one other person that says, let's look at recent sold. Oh man, it's selling for $365 and $350. If I put a $300 bid in, man, I'm getting a steal. Nobody else wanted it. Nobody else wanted it. That individual won it. Good for them. They paid $50 or $65 less than the two other random individuals that, needed it now. So all it took was for three people to have a little bit of fear of missing out to make this book seem like it's larger than it is. But I'm going to tell you, folks, because there was no other bids on that auction, guys, this book should not be selling even for $300 in a 9.8. So I don't want to sound, what's the word? I don't want to sound rude. I don't want to belittle anyone. Look, I hope these three individuals are happy. I really do hope they're happy. I do. But I will say this. They got duped. And that's just my personal opinion. I would have never paid that much. And if those three people didn't have a little itch, I guarantee you those three books would have been sitting on eBay probably for a lot longer. And the sellers would have probably had to say, well, maybe I have it too high. Let me work down my price to see if I get anybody on the hook. This is why it's important, folks, to be sound buyers. This is why patience more often than not does pay off. You got high raw copies of this book selling for $20. $20. That might be potential 9.8 candidates. $300 for this book is a no-no. Props or flops, I got to give this one a big, juicy belly flop. Because I'm not saying, who knows? If some of these characters show up in the MCU, we know that the MCU at this point could do anything with their properties. They could do horror. They could do spy espionage. They could do, cultural pieces, historical. They could do absolutely anything when it comes to the genre exploration. And we know with She-Hulk, they're taking a whole different tone. Maybe they can bring these characters in and have fun with it, and it's exciting. But I just don't see this book have any real staying power whatsoever for this book to be a $300+ book and a 9.8. $20 for a high raw, though, I'm not mad at that. I am not mad at that at all. So that's why I said everyone bidding and buying the raws, not too shabby. That's okay. But in terms of this book overall, the graded books, I got to give it a flops.
I'm with you 100%. I do want to explain something here. This is a John Byrne creation. We talk about loving John Byrne, but this is a tongue-in-cheek group. It was meant to be funny. Like it was meant. I see people. The lady's name is Dinosaur. The other dude's name is Flat Man. Like it's all tongue-in-cheek, and it's ridiculous to be ridiculous on purpose. So take that with a grain of salt because She-Hulk is going to be tongue-in-cheek. Yeah. She's going to be breaking that fourth wall. She's going to be having fun, doing some fun things. So is there any substance to this rumor? I don't know what the leak was. I didn't see it. I've heard a variety of things about it. Somebody wants to tell us in the comments what it is. But it's within the realm of possibility. But what Chris said, hell no. Guys, $350 for this book, please. Unless you think it's valuable and worth it to you, okay, that's fine. Chris and I always say, if it's worth it to you, go for it. But my God, if you're on the fence and you don't know, no. Dan, please expand on that.
I was thinking about this. Jeff, Chris, how we can make a fortune. We should start our own gossip and rumor mill. We'd make a fortune because this is another example of why this comic market is not crashing. There's still so much interest just by someone's rumor. They got, who knows where that got started out here.
Yep.
I've seen that cover before. I may have it. And if I did, I paid 75 cents for it, so I got my money's worth. I wouldn't pay much. I don't remember the story. But again, it all comes down to content of story. In fact, I was going to save this for later, but I'll bring it up now. Everyone knows I'm a huge Defenders fan. And the reason why is because the Defenders were a great story, especially in the very beginning. And then they went to the wayside because of bad writing. The same can be said, however, of the X-Men. Because think about the X-Men. When you think about the X-Men, what do you think about? Storm, Colossus, Wolverine, and all those great stories, Jean Grey, the Phoenix, and so forth. That almost never happened because if you remember, X-Men started fantastically in issue 1. It went all the way to 66, but the sales went down and they went into reprint mode rather, because they didn't have any new stories. And that series almost went to the wayside like the Defenders. If a man named Chris Claremont had not come and rescued that series, we would not see the X-Men as we see them today. So think about that. There would be no Storm. There'd be no Colossus. There'd be no Nightcrawler. Wolverine would be a fraction of what we see him today. Why? Because one man had a great ability to write stories. That's what I see about the Defenders, by the way. We didn't have such a person like Chris Claremont saving that storyline. But I mention that because I'd have to go back and read that particular West Coast Avengers book. If the story's great, fantastic. If it isn't great, just let it be.
I don't remember what the story. I got this book. I was diehard into West Coast Avengers. I was because John Byrne just, again, I didn't realize that artists look different until I looked at his art. I'm like, wait, this is different. So that's when but I don't remember the story. I do know that it was, again, tongue in cheek. It was meant to be funny. So
I will say one. Oh, sorry, Jeff. Did you?
No, go.
Okay, I was just going to add to Dan's point about starting the rumor mill, and Dan, it's such a great point because, and I've said this before. It's like, just folks, if you guys, read a few comics here and there, explore Marvel Wiki, watch some YouTube videos. If you guys we're talking about Marvel. This could be the same with DC too, but obviously Marvel's the one with the MCU right now that is just been so successful and is so expansive right now, and they're not slowing down, right? So we use them as the prime example, but there are so many characters out there that if we just know a little bit about the characters, a little bit about the stories in the books, we can sit here and speculate on so many characters and books that nobody's even talking about right now and get them for decent prices, because more likely than not, a majority of these characters at some point in time are going to show up in the MCU. I mean, look at, and this goes back to how we're jumping on things. And like you just said, Dan, the interest is so there still. Look at what happened when, Ethan Hawke's character got a name of a character that is a nobody had one appearance in a comic book.
One in all of history of Marvel.
And this comic was like a $3, $4, $5 package thing, and it was selling for $150. So it's crazy because, and I tell you all to take heed, because I could sit here, and this is why, now we're kind of getting off topic, but I do want to make this point before we wrap up the segment. I'm sorry, but I do not like scoopers. Not personally. I'm not saying I hate anybody personally. There's probably some great people out there, but it's so cutthroat nowadays. And most of them don't even have inside connections. And they just start their Twitter account or their IG and they make a little meme and they say, this character is confirmed to show up, and they're pulling it out of their ass. And it's creating this intense FOMO with people. And also it's allowing people to not be able to differentiate between credible sources and non-credible sources. So the reason why I had to bring that up, because I go back to this. This is just a rumor, folks. So while it's one thing to be ahead of the game, like if you were speculating on Great Lake Avengers saying, I'm going to buy these books for cheap before anybody talks about it because I think they're going to show up in the MCU, fine. But now, if you think you're getting ahead of the curve because of a rumor and a 9.8 selling for $350, you're missing it. You're missing it. So
well, it also goes back to Jeff when last time I co-hosted. Because Chris, you were sick, if I remember
Oh, yeah.
correctly, and we brought up the Hulk 156, the Bill Murray spec.
Yeah.
That was just a rumor, and that book just exploded. Why? Because it was Bill Murray.
Oh,
But here it
yeah.
is, where we know March of 2022. We're all still waiting for Mephisto. He's not here yet, right? Remember that rumor? Yeah. So take it with a grain of salt.